Alright, so I have no clue what I'm doing, but the one thing I do know is that video has gone through a sea change in the last 2 decades. We've gone from standard definition to high definition and even 4K and beyond. But it's only now, in 2021, that music is about to get a complete overhaul. I'm in a place called New Edge Studios in Mumbai, and it's India's first Dolby Atmos music certified studio. This is where all the magic happens, and today we are going to meet the magicians behind all this. Having spent his younger years around accomplished musicians, Meghdeep has evolved into a veritable force in the world of composing and producing, along with arranging and singing too. His latest release, Boonda Bandi, is out now on all streaming platforms and in Dolby Atmos on Apple Music. Award-winning recording engineer and a total geek at heart, Shadab is a master of his craft and probably the man behind your favorite Bollywood song. New Edge Studio, where this conversation takes place, was his passion project, and it's India's first Dolby certified Atmos music mixing studio. So he knows a thing or two about how to mix for spatial audio. As the man who changed the face of headphone e-commerce in India, Raghav is something of a prodigy. Since his other hobby, collecting airline baggage tags, has come to a grinding halt these days, his focus is on HeadphoneZone.in. His labor of love that has become the go-to website for all things portable audio. He knows the future of high-res music is, well, let's find out. I feel like I'm gate crashing a nerd fest here because I just dropped into the conversation and all I could hear was things that I could not understand or just barely caught on to. But I had to get all you busy guys in one room only to discuss probably the biggest thing in the world of music since stereo. And I'm pretty sure you would agree. We're talking about lossless and spatial audio. It's taken its own sweet time to come to fruition, to finally, and also it's come for free, right? Which is why I think all of us are so excited that Apple Music was the first one to actually get the service in the industry in India. Over the few years, I've realized this, that the one thing that people talk about a lot, every time there's a new sea change in technology, especially in music, people say that, this is exactly how the artist intended the sound to be. With every new kind of a decoding format or a surround format. In your views, how close do you think that we have achieved that with lossless audio and spatial audio?
I think as a composer, producer, songwriter, I've always felt, especially working for the Indian films, the music of it, that there's always less space for tracks in a stereo, and with Atmos, I think it has brought in a huge liberation to the process of writing, because in the coming future, in the near future, I think we'll find music composers and producers writing music in that format, starting to write in that format. And because right now we are still mixing in stereo and then spreading it out to Atmos, But there are often times when we often struggle to place a certain element in the mix, and find the right place for it. How we used to sit in an auto rickshaw in childhood going to the school. We used to find a place for each other. Thoda aage ho jaye, tu thoda piche ho jaye. We used to adjust. I believe with Atmos, I think this adjustment will be lesser. There will be way more space for elements to find their own existence and their own contribution to the track, because with every time the technology upgrades itself, the process of writing music changes, the process of envisioning music changes, because these days we don't write a piece of trumpet just as a piece of trumpet. We imagine the kind of saturation it must be doing on the microphone and going through the preamp, or we must be imagining the space it is playing in, how far, how close it is playing. So the whole involvement of this Z-axis and its place within the song, I think that will enormously affect the way we write and envision music.
I think Meghdeep covered his artistic thing, how writing music, and I believe that definitely when the technology is evolving with time and process, artists think a lot about how to fit in their art in new technology, So right now we have Atmos, we have more width, more field, more area to fit in whatever they are thinking, and I think we are just in the very start of it.
Yes.
So the way when mono was there and then stereo came in and people used to listen it on mono, and a lot of confusion happening. The way 5.1 came in and then there was confusion in the start. So I think there'll be little confusion, but we always think on the brighter side.
Yes.
Of course, I mean, the experiences, from what I've heard, an experience is very different on a pair of headphones as opposed to a multi-channel speaker system like a Dolby Atmos home theater system. So in your view, how does it change the game completely?
So, I mean, if I think back, at least in my lifetime, the last 20 years from a consumer's point of view, technology is really just evolving in one direction, which is to make music more accessible, more convenient to the end listener. Like everything since the first music CD released has been in the direction of making things more accessible, more convenient. To the point that we were listening to music at a fraction of the bitrate, the quality of what left the music studio, but everybody was on board with that. Everybody was happy with that because music had become so easy, so accessible. And now if you think of it, you can't possibly get music any more accessible than what we've had in the last few years, where you have an unlimited library of music sitting in your pocket for virtually no cost. With Apple going lossless, with Apple having spatial audio available to everybody at no cost, it's for me the first step in probably decades where you're moving away from just convenience to actual sound quality in a direction closer to what the artist wanted.
Intended.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
but we've not done anything in the industry in such a long time to make music sound better. We've done everything to make it easier for people to listen to music anywhere all the time. So at least I'm hoping this is the beginning of a wave where you will start seeing headphones, speakers, hardware, everything around the idea that, okay, how can music now finally start sounding better?
Digital has always got a very bad rep for sounding harsh, for sounding digital, for a lack of a better word. And even now, I mean, if you go to any purist house, you will still find turntable or a vinyl somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think now, because of, like Raghav was saying, lossless has become so accessible, the whole synergy between bits and sampling rate and the fact that everybody is having to educate themselves, first of all, what is a bit rate, what is sampling rate, which people who were consuming music had no clue about or didn't even want to know.
Yeah.
Because they never had to know. It was MP3, it's fine. It didn't matter whether it was 256 kbps or 320 kbps or anything more than that.
Yeah.
But now suddenly people are interested in whether it's 24-bit, whether it's 16-bit, whether it's more than that, whether it's 96 kilohertz, 192 kilohertz, and of course there are so many confusions about compatibility.
Yeah.
So again, a question to you guys: do you think that the synergy between bitrate and sampling is being blown out of proportion in the wake of music, and the essence of music is going to get lost?
Man, I can tell you what from my experience, it's that we talk to hundreds of audiophiles every day, but one thing that all audiophiles have in common is that they all want to reach this imaginary goal of listening to music almost exactly as the way the artist intended it, right? It wants to be as close as possible to what the artist wanted. And it's really because they love the artist so much. It's really no other reason for it. So we never used to have a conversation around, okay, this album is released in 16-bit or this is released in 24-bit until now. Apple Music has quite literally put that, parlance in common tongue language for everybody by just putting it on everyone's phone. Now you have people who are calling me up and saying that, all right, I want to be able to hear the difference between 16-bit and 24-bit, between 44.1 kilohertz and 96 kilohertz. How can I hear that? Can you what do I need to be able to appreciate that? It's because of this idea that, oh my God, the artist did something, put something in that music that I'm not able to hear, and now I want to.
But is it true also for older recordings which were probably not made in, say, in 2496, and they have been upsampled or maybe remixed? Do they have anything to gain from a new remixing process?
So the very older records, what you see is they were recorded on tapes. So it's already
It's analog, it's gone.
in the highest form,
Yes.
highest possible quality.
Yeah.
So now they are re-recording it or remastering it on higher sample rates to keep the quality intact. We are yet to reach that proper tape thing. Yet
So we are trying to make digital sound more analog
more
by
analog,
increasing the bandwidth.
more real.
Yeah.
So the higher sample rate you go, you are more real in terms of pronunciation of the music.
Bitrate and sampling rate are similar to resolution and frame rate for video. Bitrate determines the dynamic range of the music, like contrast or HDR in video. So it tells you how loud or soft the recorded content can be without going into distortion. Sampling rate, on the other hand, is the number of digital snapshots taken every second of the incoming signal before converting it to an analog waveform. So essentially, the higher the sampling rate, the smoother the music. Or in terms of perception, you'll hear more depth and detail.
How important is that when you're actually thinking of a melody or a harmony? Do you always, as a creator, think that this sound should be somewhere behind the listener or maybe on the side of the listener, maybe angled towards the listener? How has that changed your creation process?
I think that has always been a part of the process. It's just that the dimensions have widened up. As a producer, when I write an arrangement, I write my arrangement along with its sound. When I'm writing a piece, for example, if I'm writing a guitar piece, I know where in the room the guitarist is sitting and playing that piece. And to have that vision, I think Atmos stepping in has definitely empowered the musicians a lot. But I would like to also add to the whole discussion about the introduction of higher sample rates and the digital getting better every day. I speak this from the perspective of not just an artist who is creating, but also an artist who is consuming music, because an artist consumes way more amount of music than they create. And as an artist, we often go back to songs which were mono, which were recorded on tape, which we still listen to on radio as mono songs. With the coming in of technology, there have been three things that have affected. Number one is the accessibility to the intimacy that immersive, I would say, the capability to immerse yourself into the sound that you're listening to. So number one is that if I listen to a song, say on radio, which is not as lossless and not as great in terms of, it's not as good as studio grade or a master grade audio.
Maybe streaming.
Yeah, it's probably more on that zone. But if the music pulls you, if the music connects, if you feel a connect with the music, you would want to hear it again when you go back home. You'd Shazam it probably, and you'd want to go home and listen to it. So this is where number 2 point comes in, where the engineer, the producers, the composers who have worked on the song in a manner that they give the best possible experience to the listener by recording. For example, if I want to record drums, I would try to record drums in a manner that the listener feels like being in the same room with the drums. The listener feels like listening to that performance firsthand, even if it is just an audio file, it's not a concert. That is where number 2 point comes in, where it will also empower the creators to be as close and as access and have the access to the listener, to their listeners in an immersive manner. And that is where the number 3 point comes in, where the Atmos technology now steps in, where it gives the listener or the consumer or the artist who's listening to some piece of music a way more lyrical experience, a way more precise experience, where they can feel their favorite drummer playing certain chops in that access.
As a listener, we always look for experiences.
Exactly.
It's not just only about hearing something, it's not just about just listening to something. We want to experience it. you want to experience it in the body.
Yeah.
On the
Correct.
that
It
air
has to be a
vibration
visceral
has to be there.
experience.
I think that's the correct word, experience.
Experience. So we are always, as a human being, we are always running behind to experience things, whether we are in video, audio, or everything. So I think we are on the right path of evolution where we are kind of experiencing lossless audio and then Atmos, because I heard Atmos over speaker, Atmos playback speaker, and it sounds damn good.
Also because you have a damn good system to listen to it on.
I'd like to add to it because immersive listening is right now more dominant on headphone-based platforms. I think it also kills the limitation of room acoustics and calibration and having a home theater, but it could be accessed anywhere. Like you can sit
But
in
I
your
think
car.
we are on the start stage of that immersive listening over headphone, apart from stereo. I think maybe in future, in coming few months or a year, we'll have very new technology for headphones where we can just.
He's already excited. I'm going to be selling more headphones.
Correct. It's just that the limitation of calibrating your setup in a home theater. It gives you your own home theater in your headphones.
And also the accessibility, right? I mean, just in terms of the finances and the commercial aspect of it, it's a lot more convenient and affordable to invest in a pair of high-end headphones as opposed to a high-end multi-channel speaker system. When the video side of things, the broadcaster shifted from standard definition to high definition, and I remember reading this piece where all the newsreaders, who had very harsh lighting on their faces during primetime news or through the day, they actually had to change the way they do makeup because HD started revealing so many details which you would otherwise miss on standard definition, which no one knew. I mean, even the camera people didn't know about that because they were behind a HD camera for the first time. So they were finding things on people's faces that they never knew existed. So similarly, I mean, on the audio side of things, do miking techniques need to change now because of maybe more headroom, more bandwidth because of lossless?
I think Shadab bhai would be the right person to answer this.
I think miking techniques, we can have more experiments right now. So there's a basic science behind everything, whatever we record in, there's a science involved. So we can, do some experiment in that science because we have now 118 objects to play with in immersive Atmos music playback. So with time, it will happen, and we are already doing it. There's Deca Tree, there are a lot of other techniques which are used for recording surround formats. So these things are going to become more common right now rather than just limited to a very big studio or very big place. So eventually it's going to take time, but yeah, you are right. Your observation is very bad on about HD to audio.
Yeah, I mean it's true, and also this is something I realized when I was actually listening to some of the classic rock tracks in spatial audio at home. And some of the classic tracks that we've all grown up on, like Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams or Sweet Child O' Mine by Guns N' Roses, suddenly I could hear drums that I never ever heard before in the last 30 years of listening to that album. I mean, I never knew that the kick drum in Summer of '69 was so powerful. Actually, I could feel it in my chest. I mean, it was like there are suddenly 4 subwoofers instead of 1 in the room. So is that something like you were saying in that you can add in retrospect, even though the recording might not have it, you can, for spatial and for lossless, you can add certain dynamics?
So there are a lot of tools available right now. You can just do whatever you want to do with the track. You can add, you can go with extra sub informations. You can have extra top information. I'm talking about the higher end. So you can manipulate the frequency. But the main question what you asked about that HD and the audio thing. So I believe that right now with this whole Atmos thing, we are in more detailing. So definitely it's going to change how we are perceiving the recording process and how we have been doing recordings and tracking and mixing for over the many years. So it's going to change a bit because after when I started doing Atmos mixes, I started seeing my stereo mixes also in very different way. I was able to create more space in my stereo mix after when I did Atmos mixes for the streaming for iTunes and for other streaming platform. So it kind of opens up your brain and tells you that there are a lot of more possibilities to to experiment and do things.
So I've been also listening to Bunda Bandi over the last couple of days since it's been out, and I realize it's a very subtle Atmos mix. So is that a decision that is personal, or it becomes a group decision with the producers, with the artists, with the engineers? How much of a say each person has in that experience?
In this case, it was my decision because the song was originally written for a stereo mix, and I wrote it on a stereo setup, and the glue of that song, we were discussing some time back that the glue, the musical glue, I'm not talking about the mix glue or the sonic glue, but the musical glue that certain instruments, because there's a lot of syncopation in that song, there's a lot of syncopative writing. So these syncopations were, wouldn't have been as relevant as they are right now if I would have placed one element here and the other on the other extreme. So the mix had to be together, the elements had to be not
coherent,
so widely spread out. There were certain elements like the hums, the female hummings and all of that, which were more angelic and more on a diffused this thing, So I kept them on the rear, and there's certain elements that I wanted to be dissolved. I wanted them to stay dissolved and diffused. So that only those elements were really given the full space of the spatial mix. But the song, as a whole, the whole music, it was basically a deliberate call to keep everything together as close as possible within the mix.
So going forward from now on, in fact, both for Shadab and you, will you always have an Atmos mix in your head when you're making even a stereo mix? Like, for example, even if the client has asked for a stereo mix or the project requires only a stereo mix, in your head, will you always be thinking spatial now?
In my head, it was always there. Now only people launched.
You're ahead of the time.
Yeah. I was like, okay, if this song is mixed in Atmos or maybe immersive, how it would sound. So yeah, I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
I think we all have that.
We all do that. We all envision that somehow, but we are limited by the stereo, these things. But I think now a lot of opportunities have opened up, and I think I'll also upgrade to an Atmos setup. I'm planning to, because I want to start writing in an Atmos setting, because there's a lot that could happen. It's like giving yourself a bigger canvas. You can make a small painting, but then when you have a bigger canvas, you think colors differently, you think objects differently, and you think shades differently. You see light very differently in the first place. You see the canvas very differently. So I think
will that also change the end result compared to what you had started off with and what the final product is?
Definitely. I think
for better or worse. I mean, it could be either. Because I've also heard some really bad examples, of older songs being remixed in Atmos or Spatial or even Dolby 5.1 going back, and case in point, Hotel California. Almost everybody has heard that song maybe hundreds of times, and it sounded very impressive initially when you could see the entire band sitting on the stage in front of you. But when the shaker starts and it comes from the surround, it just throws you off because you can see the musician playing the instrument in front of you, but the sound was coming from the side and the backs, which was very unnatural. It was spooky, it was new, and it was very novel for that time, but it wasn't accurate. So you think those are some of the teething problems that we might have to go through for Spatial also?
Yes, I think.
I think if we are attaching these video and audio combining together in one world, then definitely we need to take care. But only audio, it's like a free world. So music writing decides what kind of immersive experience we want. Either it's stereo or maybe Atmos or Spatial, whatever we call it. It depends on writing. So now even with the band who's sitting, performing in front of you, we can have writing in such a way, going some kind of legato stuff or some chords or something which can be used as an immersive, treated as an immersive way. So you will have your entire band in front of you, but still you are getting the spills all over and you are getting different kind of sustained sounds, which is kind of glued to the song. So we are right now on the start of this technology, and I'm also facing the same problem. As he said, that glue factor of the song. So it's not about frequency, it's not about immersive, it's keeping all that aside, we have something called musical glue when 2-3 multiple instruments mix together and creates a combined sound of its own. So I think this is because it's in starting stage. So this will also evolve the way earlier, we did not had this stereo pads when there was mono. It used to be only organ or mono instrument. Then we had this stereo.
Correct.
So the way we started thinking about adding instrument in stereo changed. So eventually this is also going to take a little time, and writing will change, and I think
I'd like to also add two things to it. Number one is that whenever there is a technological advancement that happens in the field, especially in the field of sound and music, I think what we must remember is to treat it like salt in food. It has to be tastefully done.
स्वाद अनुसार.
Yes, absolutely. जो नमक होता है वो हम स्वादानुसार यूज़ करते हैं किसी भी रेसिपी में, या जो भी मिठास होती है अगर हम it has to be tastefully done, most importantly, because just because we have the liberty of using a space in the rear left or rear right doesn't mean that we should use it. It's also
Exactly
about
my point, yeah.
it's also because I'll tell you my experience in terms of film mixes. There have been times when I've done a song and there is a tambourine which is running in syncopation to the kick, and now usually when these mixes used to be translated into 5.1 into a theater. Now theaters are huge places. They are not your rooms. They are not 10 by 10 mixed spaces. They are huge halls, with speakers lined up. So the kick is right there in the center, in the front, but you have the tambourine dancing all over the place, and you lose the musicality of it, because it's not just that the tambourine goes away from the kick, but it also goes out of time, because there's a difference. There's a sonic
delay.
lag.
Yeah.
That the kick coming to you and the tambourine that you're hearing right from the rear has a different amount of time that miniature fraction of second that the kick takes to come to you, and the tambourine that you feel, because, and they're extreme frequencies. They're one is at 70, 80, and the other one is somewhere dwelling at 10 or 15. I think that is one blunder that everybody must take care. Is that
it's very easy to kill that illusion you're trying to create in the first place.
Yeah, Shadab Bhai and a few other engineers stand at the top pedestals of this country as mix engineers is because they think as musicians. They don't think as sound engineers treating audio. They treat it takes special effort to turn sound into music. It has to be right from the stage of conception. It cannot be fixed in the mix.
That's very well said.
Dolby Atmos and spatial audio can sound very different on headphones compared to a multi-channel 7.1.2 speaker system. In either case, the objective is to give music more scale, more height, and more depth to immerse you in a semi-sphere of sound. On a Dolby Atmos-enabled soundbar or AV receiver, the effect is similar to Dolby Atmos for movies, but of course, optimized and mixed for music. Whereas on headphones, spatial audio can also include head tracking to adjust the sound dynamically as you turn your head around.
So do you also feel, all of y'all, do you also feel like a sense of satisfaction now that you spend months, probably years on a certain project, but now that you know that at least the consumer, whoever is listening to it, is at least getting 95% of the experience that you are getting in your studio? Or there's still, I'm sure there's a huge amount of variable involved depending on the hardware that the consumer is using and on what system, on what speakers, and on headphones, and etc. But overall, in terms of delivery, that you've done your job and they can potentially extract 95-100% of the performance?
Yeah, actually I'm so very happy for that fact that because of the lossless and higher sample rate file format, at least the people who are using the kind of hardwares and they want to experience it, they can listen to it the way we are listening in the studio.
But did you have that sense of frustration earlier when it was only MP3?
A lot.
Just for the record, we'll put it out there, MP3 sucks.
A lot. In fact, we would mix the song. On the DAW, it's perfect. All right, we are liking it. The moment we cut MP3 and listen to it, and anywhere, the sound changes because the coding is different and it treats your sound wave in a different way altogether.
Yeah.
If I can maybe ask another question in the same lines. For a long time, at least growing up, you'd notice that music was probably made for the radio listener, and then music was probably made for the person in the movie theater. And for a long time, we were told that the best place to listen to music from popular movies was really just to go to the movie theater and listen to it. It's never going to sound better than than that. And then we went into music primarily made for the YouTube generation, right? But if I can ask you now, do you think that we're now going to a time when you're putting the music out there, you're imagining the person primarily streaming it on Apple Music, listening to it at home, or you still think that it's the movie theater being adapted for the listener at home?
Yeah, we do have some discussions, these kind of discussion nowadays, that after the file is getting converted to MPEG-4, your audio is going and getting slapped to video format and getting re-exported, then getting re-uploaded on YouTube, or going to streaming sites where they are doing it 256 kbps. So we always have that kind of concern that it's going to change and turn out different. So eventually with time we kind of learned with the process that what to compensate over here to get the right thing for the consumer, because right now I think the bigger the technology, the smaller the objects to experience, the more better technology we have, smaller speaker.
So also I wanted to ask you, Raghav, I mean in your case specifically, because you interact with a lot of end consumers, it sort of feels like we've come full circle, having to invest for the last maybe 10 years or so in Bluetooth devices and wireless devices, and giving up all that and moving on to back to wired to be able to enjoy lossless music. How are the consumers taking it?
Yeah, so I mean, I always tell everybody, when you're buying a headphone can either be convenient or it can sound good, but never both. And it's very, very rare that you can get convenient headphones that can also sound good, but you're probably paying an arm and a leg for that then. And I think it's for the first time in years, you find people understanding that the convenience has a price. And if you want Bluetooth headphones, you want something that's true wireless, you want something that pairs with every single device around the house, that basically means that you're in some way or the other compromising on good sound. And now you have a lot of people who are saying that, listen, forget the convenience, but I want something that really, really sounds very good. And if that means that I need to carry a digital to analog converter, plug it into my phone, consume a hell of a lot more data, for every song that I'm listening to, plug in a earphone with wires dangling all over the place, that's fine. But I want something that sounds very, very good. I haven't had that kind of conversation with people for a long, long time. And that the fact that Apple Music is kind of telling everybody that, listen, until now music sounded okay, but now it's going to sound really, really good. It's got people, scratching their heads wondering what hardware do they need to be able to take advantage of that. Yeah. And I think that, it's going a full circle. So yes, I think that if a person is listening to music and wanting to give it a serious listen, not a casual background score, and wants to spend that 5 minutes listening to that song by really immersing themselves, there's no shortcut to having a good wired headphone and using even if it's an inexpensive digital to analog converter, plugging into your mobile phone. No mobile phone today is capable of giving you high resolution output, so you need a digital to analog converter, and no Bluetooth codec or wireless codec today is going to be able to give you music straight out from the source in lossless. So I think that that's probably what the audiophiles portable setup of the day is like.
I think Apple has done a very good job of making people understand that, listen, our own headphones are not going to cut it if you want absolute best quality of the highest tier lossless. Yeah. So do you get a lot more requests for people wanting to know about wired headphones now?
Yeah, I think the first thing is right now there's a lot of questions in people's mind, because until now no one brought up this conversation around bitrate, sample rate, lossless, high res. None of this was talked about earlier. I mean, if you were listening to music on YouTube, nothing wrong with that. Now for the first time, people's minds have kind of blown up and they're questioning everything about the way they were listening to music. So we get a lot of calls, asking us for, okay, explain this to me. But more than anything else, we now have people who are finally saying that, all right, if you say that, my headphones right now don't sound good, what is a good sounding headphone supposed to be? And then you see the expressions on their faces light up and they hear something they haven't heard before. That's probably the most satisfying part to me.
To find something new in a song that you've heard hundreds of times and like the back of your hand, I think that's a real joy, right? I mean, which is how audiophilia really starts from and emerges from.
Yeah, because you love this music. You're so emotional about it. You think, that you have these emotions, memories attached to the music. You think you know it. And then, when you hear something and you're like, oh my God, I've been living a lie until now. Finally there's something I could hear.
The whole world comes crashing down.
Yeah.
So a lot of time while mixing, we hide so many elements so that it's not heard on the very first go unless you don't listen to it for 3, and then you suddenly realize, oh my God, this instrument was present.
Wow.
How come I didn't get it?
So it's like a surprise element you embed into the track.
I think we love that degradation, we love that dirt. Even in the era of digital, there's so much. I think everything is digital around us, but we still every day we aim at sounding as analog as possible. I think, at least I do, because I track so much while I make music. It could be synths, it could be guitars, it could be just claps, it could be sound of my bracelet, or could be some utensil that. But I track a lot of sounds while I write.
How different would be the end result from the recording engineer point of view or the mixing engineer point of view of someone who has mixed an entire album only through headphones, as opposed to an engineer who has access to something like you have, like a proper 7.1 sort of a Atmos system? Because I'm sure that if you're just mixing an entire album only with a pair of headphones or just a stereo pair of near-field monitors, your end result, because you can't hear it, you can't envision it, does that have a bearing and difference in the final product?
For Atmos?
For spatial audio and Atmos?
For spatial audio, I think I'll talk. I don't know about the technical part, how it's going to translate and run, but I'm talking in terms of musical perspective, musical glue, what we talk, because until that is not created, you'll not be able to experience the track what you're listening.
Shadab uses a combination of Pro Tools and Cubase for his Atmos mixes, and his monitor is controlled by an Avid Matrix Studio and Dolby Atmos renderer. A whole rack of compressors, EQ and reverb units keep him busy, while a height-adjustable motorized stand ensures he keeps working 18 hours a day, sitting or standing.
So since we are into the making process, I feel that we for mixing Atmos or spatial audio, we definitely need to immerse ourselves while we are listening to it.
So you need the right hardware to be able to...
Because sound is not only just heard when you're listening to some good sound. It's just not only heard on in your ears. You're experiencing it through airwaves, through the lower frequency, which is making that certain kind of compression in your ears because of the room.
Yeah. And pressurizing the room.
Pressurizing the room, yeah. So all that, these things matters a lot when you are experiencing music. So when you are mixing it, definitely I will say that we need the set of speakers and a large setup to mix it.
Just like the stereo mixes that we used to do, one could make out just by the image of your mix that it was mixed on a headphone or a monitor.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think because your acoustics play a very crucial role in how you perceive your music, and headphones bypass that one dimension.
Alright, so since we are talking about music, the one thing that I really wanted to know from all of y'all is that which is the one album that you would want in spatial audio, not mixing or not composing and recording and creating, but one album you want to listen to in spatial audio, your all-time favorite?
Roja.
You just took my name. Yeah, Roja.
The reason why I made Bunda Bandi is out of inspiration from Rahman sir's 90s sound. Those clean, angelic female chorus sections and strings and all of that, like very cinematic, and also I think that's one album that I would really want
Same here.
In spatial. No, you can't have the same answer. I'm coming to you later.
No, same. Because as a kid,
Yeah.
that was the first album which changed my life.
Yeah.
The way I was listening to music, it just changed everything.
Yeah.
It just changed.
So you can give me your second choice also now.
I think Roja only. I'll stick to Roja.
That's the one album both of you all want to listen to in spatial.
Definitely.
But what's stopping you? Both of you all have access to Mr. Rahman.
Not me, him actually.
No, but I don't know whether. I think he'll do in future.
Yeah. So we can look forward to Rahman's back catalogue in Atmos at some point.
If they have multi-track available, definitely.
Yeah. And Raghav, for you?
I'll go with Bombay.
Okay.
I'm a little younger than them.
Choice. Yeah.
Actually, that's.
Yeah,
But since Roja was the first one, so for me that is just inside my DNA right now.
वो हम सब के DNA में.
चला गया है.
I think every musician and every engineer and artist from our generation has been
influenced. It was a true trailblazer of sorts for
that was a true lossless.
Yeah, and it still remains lossless, you know. Like
it had that feeling of lossless tape. You know, the tape which doesn't have loss, it's playing. Wow.
I'd also love to hear A.R. Rahman sir's Vande Mataram in Atmos.
Yeah. Oh, that was a beautiful
just
recorded
Vande
album,
Mataram. Yeah.
Even for stereo.
Yeah, especially the drum sound. I mean, way ahead of its time for India.
But really, any album from the 60s and early 70s, if you think about it, stereo was so new. Like, I remember listening to the Beatles last weekend, and my first reaction was, why is the drums panned all the way there?
Yeah, they used to use the pan pot a lot, flange.
So I'll tell you one secret for that. So as a mix engineer internally, so earlier when we always, while giving backup, we did not had, you know, that for many songs we will not be able to give multi-track backup.
Yeah.
So we would transfer one side rhythm and one side all the melody on a DAT tape, and that would be a separate multi-track backup, you know.
So it created that effect unintentionally.
Unintentionally, and they would be like, wow, yeah, drum one side, this one side sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Any album, I think, from that era, it was made with, you know, such a great emphasis on, okay, let's use stereo to its maximum potential, that everything sounds cinematic.
That's true. Classic rock, in fact, I think has, at least from what I've heard until now, has really benefited the most. Because, I mean, the dynamics which are completely robbed of in their stereo mixes back in the days because of maybe inherent limitations of the recording equipment or the delivery format, I think that really comes to the fore now, you know, especially with some of the tracks on Apple Music like Bon Jovi's album, Guns N' Roses. They really have so much more power now.
Because classic rock is probably best experienced live, and this is the closest
and
you're
loud
going to get
volumes
to it.
as well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. In terms of hardware, in terms of the monitors, in terms of the mics, in terms of the headphones, all the gear that you use in the studio, how do you see that changing, or would you want to change that? If you think that, you know, you are experiencing limitations now, you think that has room to grow?
So I think in terms of gears, we had Atmos earlier, so but we had Atmos for films. Now we have Atmos for streaming platform like iTunes or Tidal, or there are a lot of other platforms for streaming Atmos. So I think for me as a mix engineer, I would suggest everybody to go on a similar stereo format gears what they are using for Atmos. So it will be fully blown. If you're using 2 speakers, you'll have to have like maybe 15, 16 or 20 or if whatever you're using as a pair in 2 for stereo, it will just blow up.
Multiplied by 3
so that is going to help the artist and the engineers to have that similar continuity of sound from stereo to Atmos when they're moving to the next format and in a more detailed way.
Yeah.
I think whatever monitors you are using, you would like to use the same monitors in Atmos format because that is going to give him the similar character what he's used to in the stereo room.
And which monitors do you use right now?
I'm using KH120s.
Okay, by Neumann.
Yes. I've basically set up a live room for myself where I keep the musician there and the musician performs. And I've been recording room spills and I've been recording, you know, the instruments from different proximities and then summing them later on. So I think the room, the ambiences and the non-spot microphones will be now, way better incorporated into the mixes
to capture the feel of the ambience.
Yeah,
space.
I mean, if I've kept, for example, say a pair of KM184s, you know, to capture, say, a tabla. You know, especially instruments which are acoustically dependent, you know, Indian instruments especially that need a room to resonate and to create the right sound, you know. So if I have those small diaphragm condensers capturing the room, I can actually use those small diaphragm condensers and pair them, duplicate their signal, to the rare side of the mix, you know,
to create that reverb,
to create that space and to create, you know, that. And instead of maybe putting 2, I can put 4 microphones now, you know, because I've got a 3-dimensional access to the sound and, you know, to the kind of design I can envision, you know. So I can actually get the audiences to feel my room to feel the room I've recorded the tabla in, to feel the room that I've been tracking the guitars in. I think that's where I can start.
That's a very good thing he said, that apart from the music, whatever you're making, you can actually in immersive audio, you can make them feel what kind of room it was recorded in, what kind of studio it was in.
Great addition.
Yeah, that's
I've always fantasized, imagining how, if I hear a beautiful flute solo, you imagine the musician playing it. If I have, or if there's a beautiful string section that we hear, we imagine the orchestra playing it. That imagination, that fantasy of seeing the musician live could be made much more stronger and much more easily felt through this immersive experience. I think it's just that you need to capture and place the microphones, within the mix. I think Shadab will explain it better, that how.
Yeah, but whatever he's saying is absolutely right. This is the next evolution of that's what now, once we have technology the way Raghav said, that we did not had the source to play. Once we have the source to play it back, now there'll be a lot of developments in from all the sides.
I think we'll record in a 3-dimension format now. Instead of recording 2 stereos separately, we'll record basically a front left right and a rear left right at the recording stage. I just see one challenge is that we still don't have VSTIs and sound libraries calibrated for spatial mixes. So we would still.
That's why we are there. So.
Yes, that's why. So that is where the challenge comes in, because the sample libraries that already exist, the VSTIs and everything, the whole composition of the sonic compositions of most of the VSTIs still is in stereo format. So
they'll take time to catch up.
So they will take time to catch up and come into the spatial realm, because everything is hybrid in today's times. We don't record. We don't keep everything live in a track. There's always a hybrid. There's always a mix of the two. There are a lot of things that are programmed, and there are a lot of things which are live. So if I record something, if I capture something which is meant for spatial audio, the VSTIs might not catch up. So work with an engineer right from the inception.
Thank you guys for being with us today, and this was really an enlightening experience for me personally as well, because being a fan of both Lossless and Spatial, it was really insightful to get information about actually how the music is created, recorded, mixed, and finally even distributed. So, and I'm glad that consumers are coming full circle. We are going back to the days of wired headphones, whether we like it or not. But overall, I'm really looking forward to this new era of music. It's already giving me goosebumps just thinking about what is there, locked up in your hard drives, waiting to be unleashed. So,
the experts unanimously agree that high-res lossless does make an audible difference in sound quality, and it gives them more headroom to work with in the studio. Spatial audio is off to a great start, and while the results are a bit of hit and miss at the moment, it is part art and part science that will only get better with time. If you're an Apple Music subscriber, both spatial and high-res lossless tiers are unlocked for free. Sure, more services will join in soon, but for now, one thing is for certain: the future of music is immersive audio. So get yourself the right hardware to fully feel it. It's digital music finally the way music should have been before MP3.